I gobble up everything I can about the impact of AI on the workforce.
Okay.
It's,
But I'm going to pick on something that maybe like if you're a paralegal, okay. Yeah, you're laughing again, but yes, if you're a paralegal, I can tell you that I would say in 5 to 10 years, AI is going to do a better job than the human paralegal because it can slam through all that data very quickly and build correlations. If you're a pathologist or a radiologist, probably a lot fewer of you will be needed. Not that you go away, but instead of having 1,000 of them, we might need 10 of them because the rate at which these systems can go through and these things are hitting accuracy levels, Alex, of 3%, right? Which is human accuracy. That's kind of the benchmark. Sub 3%, 3%, you're hitting human accuracy levels. So once you start getting to that point, why do we need to have so many of X? Now, I think what that'll do personally is that it's going to, people don't know what they're capable of. And I think it's going to evolve society in ways that we can't imagine
it will.
because,
It will.
yeah, it'll open up whole new opportunities that go beyond the mundane of, well, I go to the library and I look up cases.
Well, let's walk through this. So I laugh when you pick on paralegals.
By the way, I have nothing against paralegals.
We can pick on it. So if you look at historically what happens, work doesn't go away. We transfer it to machines. And in this case, the machine, or you can call it automation if you want, but you transfer it to the AI. What's happening with the disruptions we see from AI, and the only way it's different than every other major disruptions we've ever seen, is this is the first major disruption from a technology that affects the knowledge worker. Now, that's a fancy way of
Yes.
saying white collar that need access to applications and data. So the machine can be specially trained once instead of sending thousands of people through school, and it replaces the knowledge workers. Law is an interesting thing because the bar exam was one of the first things given to a large language model, and it passed the exam.
It also kicked butt on the SAT.
It also kicked butt on the SAT, but it still can't pass a lot of other tests like pre-med, right? It's not passing the professional engineering exams. It's not passing the ones that involve more problem solving.
Yeah. The PE exam is totally problem solving, right?
It's
And so
four
you have to
hours.
be able, yeah, that one that requires conscious thinking. So if I would say if the problem requires conscious thinking, these models don't think, contrary to popular opinion. They're pattern recognition engines.
Yeah, they are. They are. Now, let me dive into this a little more. Oxford University did a very interesting study a few years ago on the jobs that are most likely going to be disrupted from AI. And
Okay.
for the most part, when you look at the list, you go, if you understand AI, it makes perfect sense. There's a few on there that don't make any sense, like roofers and welders. And I was like, help me understand this. It turns out we have never been first of all, home construction industry doesn't adopt technology. That's
Too
one problem,
expensive in most
among
cases.
other things, right?
Yeah.
What
Yeah.
happened is what turns out roofing needs a certain amount of human judgment to build the roof, place the shingle, and all that. Now that the machines can actually combine the visual acuity that humans normally have and the manual labor, we don't need roofers as much. So some of this stuff is really interesting. There's two other important things around this that we don't want to lose. You mentioned adoption. There are lots of studies. I use some of these slides that say famous person said something silly and this happened, right? There is only need for 100 personal computers by the CEO of IBM.
I remember that. Yeah.
Einstein came out and said nuclear weapons cannot exist. Learn to regret that. We'll never have a need for flight, right? We see these kinds of things. What's happening and this is the dean of Whiting School of Engineering at Johns Hopkins, has this. He did this analysis. It shows that these famous smart people are still being wrong, but they're finding out how wrong they are faster
Yes.
because it's evolving at such a rate, and the amount of the adoption cycle is shorter than we've ever seen when we talk.
It's incredible. You look at, there was a chart on how quickly ChatGPT got to 100 million users versus how long did it take a cell phone to get to 100 million users versus how long did it take a car to get to 100 million.
It took I think it was the camera took 70 years to gain widespread adoption, right? ChatGPT 48 hours, something like that. Yeah,
Absolutely.
it's
So I,
it's
I
pretty
think
amazing.
that the pace, we just can't imagine the amount, anything that's involving, again, consciousness, it's not going to get replaced. So artists, I think that's a tough one, even though people look at all these models, these AI models out there. But when you look at a piece of art from a Van Gogh, there's something, there's a emotional response when you see it. And that can only be created by another human being who understands what it means to be a human being, right? And same thing happens in music. I mean, there's so many places we can pick those kinds of things that you're not going to replace Albert Einstein with machine learning.
No, and I think there's two parts to that. One is when I look at a beautiful piece of artwork or listen to a beautiful piece of music, there's an emotional side that says, boy, that person has talent that I don't have, right? And there's an impressive piece to it. The other one is you bring up a very important point, and it's actually referred to as model collapse, because as these models grow and they're used more and more, they they become more generic and more neutral. They've never had passion, but they really kind of lose the the sense of being human. If you use some of these tools like plagiarism and all,
Yeah.
you find that now they all have these AI indicators, and basically they're looking for the level of, they're asking the question, would a human actually talk like this?
Yeah.
So it's actually called model collapse, but you bring up an excellent point. It's 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 never going to go away.